This is a short supplement to Lesson 5 in the presentations for Siao's Grammar for Biblical Hebrew. And here we just look a little more closely at geminates and segolates with a short look at the linguistic historical background that gives rise to them. That is, how did the nouns get to be this way? Some students find it helpful to see this development to get a better grip on what they're looking at in the present form. So a long time ago, in an ancient Near East far, far away, Hebrew nouns had something called case endings. Perhaps you're familiar with languages that have cases. In the language that preceded Hebrew in its development, nouns would have an "u" ending if they were the subject of a verb. We call this the nominative. They would have an "a" ending if they were the object of a verb. We call this the accusative. And there was also an "e" ending, often used when nouns were in a relationship like of something, like the crown of the king, or a throne of gold. That sort of relationship, the of noun, would have this genitive or e ending. U, a, and e. In our frames here, we're just going to assume everything is nominative, so you'll see the u ending. So imagine a word for king, malku, malku, and a word for vow, nidru, nidru, and a word for new moon or month, hudshu, hudshu. You see that these are all of a similar pattern. They're all of the pattern consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, and then the case ending. Consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant. Compared to these other forms where it's consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, ra'abu, nabi'u. Our attention is on the first three. The bottom two are just for comparison. One day, these case endings were lost. Oh no! In all of the nouns. And so we were left, instead of with malku, we were left with malk. Instead of nidru, nidr. Instead of hudshu, hudj. These now have consonant clusters at the end, which Hebrew's not going to like, compared to such forms as ra'av, ra'ab, or nabi, which don't have consonant clusters and therefore fall out of this story. It's these ones that have the consonant clusters that are a problem. Biblical Hebrew decided to put a helping segol in between the consonant cluster to break it up. So instead of malk, we've got malek. Instead of nidr, you get nidr. Instead of hudj, you get hudesh. Technically, we would still consider these forms monosyllabic, for example, in the study of Hebrew poetry. But phonemically, we feel two syllables here. Malek, nidr, hudesh. The original vowel was changed with this adding of the helping vowel, either assimilating to the helping segol, as happens in A-class vowels like original malek. The a just becomes like the segol. It becomes melek. Everything slides together. Melek. Or in forms like nidr and hudesh, they lengthen. Neder, chodesh. And those are actually our biblical forms. Melech, neder, and chodesh. So the segol that comes between the second two characters, in forms like melech, neder, and chodesh, originates just with a helping vowel. It's a helping segol that tries to break up a consonant cluster that was left in forms like malk, nidr, and hudj when the final vowel dropped, when the original case vowel dropped off. But Imagine the forms where there was a suffix on these, where instead of king, people were saying my king, or my vow, nidri, or my new moon, chudshi. In such forms, no consonant cluster ever develops because there's no case ending on these. And the suffixes certainly don't drop off. We keep using suffixes. And so in these forms, like my king, my vow, my new moon, no consonant cluster ever develops. There's never a problem, therefore no helping vowel, therefore no nothing. And so the biblical Hebrew forms are as they would have been in the antecedent form of the language. Malki, my king. Nidri, chudshi. No problem there. So what of the geminates? Well, the pattern for geminates was basically the same as that for segolates. Consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, case vowel. You can compare amu to the form we looked at before, malku. Or chitsu, you can compare to the form we've already looked at, nidru. Or huku, class, to the form we already looked at, chudshu. The pattern is exactly the same, except these are geminates. So the two consonants that are up against one another are the same consonant. And so they will develop differently. In the unsuffixed forms, like the masculine singular, the theme vowel was lost. And so amu becomes am, chitsu becomes chitz, huku becomes huk. Here's where the segolates inserted a helping vowel, and so you might expect amem, chitzitz, hukuk, hukek. But instead, the doubling just drops off. And instead of you get chitz, huk. It was simpler to simply drop the duplicate consonant instead of inserting a helping vowel. And then you get, except in the form, in chitz and huk, we'll get compensatory lengthening for that missing duplicate consonant. Chitz and huk. Again, this compensatory lengthening usually absent in class geminate nouns. And here are our biblical forms, chitz, and huk. But again, remembering that this only happens with the unsuffixed forms that had the case ending that got dropped. What of the suffixed forms? Ami, my people. Chitzi, my arrow. Huki, my statute. There's no case ending to drop off. There's no consonant cluster left as a result, so no dropping of the duplicate consonant, and the forms remain unchanged, as in biblical Hebrew. Ami, chitzi, huki. So segolate nouns and geminate nouns differ in important ways, but this history lesson shows that they arise from a single cause. The loss of case endings from unsuffixed forms of these kittle, coddle, or koodle nouns before the biblical period of the Hebrew language. Hope you find this helpful. If you don't, turn your back on it and never think of it again. If you do, you might want to revisit the lesson 5A and B and look again at biblical forms of geminate and segolate nouns and see if this casts a little fresh perspective on them. Great. Thanks for working through Lesson 5, and we will see you for Lesson 6.